Hey guys, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Developing Tank podcast with Hashem and Alex, the three amigos. We're back again for another episode, doing what we love, talking all things photography, cameras, gear, and today we're diving into composition of, potentially, possibly, it's got to be top three of the most important things when it comes to taking a photo, what you decide to include, what you decide to exclude from the frame. So we'll be talking about composition today, composition using different techniques, different formats, different styles of cameras, and how that all can affect how your composition comes together. Also be talking examples, I'm sure, from some of our favorite photographers and how they like to compose. I know Alex has got a couple books or a book lined up ready to go.
Yeah, sure.
And we're going to dive into that topic today. So, because like everyone says, I talk too much and take over the reins. Who's going to kick off today? Because it's not going to be me.
Well, I have an interesting point just to say from the beginning is that everyone, including ourselves, is always looking to learn in this department. So please, if you're listening or watching, leave your comments and how you think about composition. I just wanted to drop that so that anyone watching from now or listening can engage wherever they want. But yeah.
And also, while we're on the topic of comments, thank you to everybody who has left some really nice comments about how much you've been enjoying this series. There's only, not an abundance of comments, because I think only, 500-600 people seem to be watching each episode, which I'm stoked with.
Wow.
I'm happy that everyone's tuning in to watch that.
But everyone fresh.
Everyone who's left a comment about how much these chats you enjoy them. I know I always enjoy catching up with the boys, and we're always talking like this. So I'm glad that other people, you're getting the same sort of enjoyment out of it. So let's go. Composition. Who's off first?
Yeah, maybe I'll start. So
Yeah.
I think it is one of the three pillars of what can make a good photo, or what makes a good photo. And for me, it's light, it's subject, and it's composition, right? So for me, of the three, light is the most important. But I think that number two, it's a tie for me between the subject itself and the composition, because you can create a better subject out of a better composition. And I wonder if you can create a better composition from a subject too. But I think that composition kind of leads as a number two for me, after light. And I think a lot of us photographers, we start out with, I don't want to put anybody down, but a kind of a 2D perspective on taking a photo, right? You have a subject in front of you, and you take that photo, and maybe you have a background. Maybe you're opening up your aperture to 1.8 or whatever, and you're going for a shallow depth of field look. And so I think a lot of us have like a kind of a 2D kind of vision perspective when it comes to composition when we're first starting out. And I think a lot of us then start to think more 3D. And I guess when I say 3D, I mean, what's paying attention to what's in the foreground as well, and what's in the middle, what's in the background, these different layers within a photo of not just subjects, but the background itself, the objects in the composition itself too, right?
For sure. It takes a while to be able to do that as well. It's like driving a car or riding a bike. You have to think about those things initially, but then after a while it becomes second nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely did start out. I mean, I think when I first started taking photos, besides what we all, everyone does. I know I was one of them, pretty landscape photos. Everyone always starts out with landscape photos. But when I started moving into, more street photography or candid stuff, it was always, the subject, whatever the subject was, that's what I focused on, the person, or, the place, architecture, whatever it was never. I never thought about layering. Especially layering is something that I feel like comes with time, when you can instantly look at a subject and see, a person on the street, but then put together, the second, third, fourth, fifth, if you're a magician, X amount of puzzle pieces you can all cram together into that one frame. I never thought about that until, it took a long time to be able to develop that eye. And I think even it's one of those things that you can watch as many YouTube tutorials as you want. They don't help. I found books, good books, do help. But it's just something that I feel like comes with time. Like the more you have to, just like, as you said, Hashem, like riding a bike, the more you ride that bike, the faster you get, etc. The more you take photos, the more you can look at your own photos and find out, sort of see like, okay, well, that works, that didn't work, etc. And then, and kind of work on your composing skills from there.
Yeah, I think that's like a typical pathway that a lot of people follow. And thinking back to when I was running introductory photography classes at the shop I used to work at, typically, especially if you get into photography doing landscape and whatnot, you'll learn these rules like rules of thirds and then leading lines, and you start to intentionally think about those things while composing an image. But it's only until you can relax and not so much just go off what the book says or think, hey, am I following rules of thirds with this, where it just comes together naturally, which is where I want to be, where most photographers want to get to, where it just becomes second nature, whether or not it's inspired by rules or other photographers. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have to start off, again, learning to change gears, press the clutch. You're thinking about it. And then after a while, that fades into the background. And whether or not you follow those rules, it's not the most important thing.
I sometimes hate those rules. I find that, like, rule of thirds, for instance, is so ingrained into me that whenever I pull the camera up to my eye, the first thing that I sort of think about is that grid, is splitting the frame into that grid. And as good as it is to have got to the point where I automatically kind of can see the grid in my eye, I can see the, splitting that standard 35mm frame, splitting it on either side or the top, and I can instantly go, okay, I can put you here, there, XXX. Sometimes I think it's great, but then on the other times, I think maybe that's like
not creative
enough.
Maybe?
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like you restrict yourself in like then maybe your compositions become bland and they become very very repetitive. Yeah, because and again, everybody knows the rule of thirds, and it's like, is my compositions going to be the same as everyone else because we're just all copying the same set of rules? I personally am more of a fan of using leading lines these days. I find leading lines seem to be, and diagonals, personally to me, create much more interest in the frame. But again, I think that's much harder to do, finding, especially in street photography. You know what I mean? Like trying to get like leading lines.
We mentioned Salgado before, that he would do it. He would use people as leading lines.
Yeah, exactly.
And using multiple of those like rules or techniques, whether it's like subframes, leading lines, shapes, or that golden rule, whatever. There's a reason why they exist. I think they're really useful, and the majority of the time, probably using the rule of thirds to some degree will create a more pleasing image that's easier to look at. But it isn't always the case. You should always think about what story you're trying to tell with it first and foremost.
No, definitely.
What do you guys think has been the one thing that has helped you get better at composing? What do you think is like this catalyst that has helped you become better at compositions?
I think I've started to think more about enjoying composition more and what inspires me, and how, like, recognizing how it is that I see the world. And it took me a while to find this common thread about how I tend to compose or types of compositions I look for. And I realized after years that it probably came from the images that I used to look at, or even going as far back as the comic books I used to read. Like, do you guys, read, do you remember Tintin and Asterix and like...
Yeah, I remember the classics.
Those spreads where they'd have this big wide establishing shot where there's all these different things happening at the same time, you know, asterisks, and they're at the dinner table or whatever it is. Like we used to draw these comics back in school where it was little stick figures playing war, and there's just like all this stuff happening. And I never really thought about it, but it was only until I started to study. Yeah, right.
I remember doing stick figures back
so
in the day. Yeah.
it was that wide composition or that story that's like all these different, you know, Renaissance painting style thing where there's all these characters on a stage. I like that type of composition. And then I discovered Joel Meyerowitz and the way he composes using that techniques, and he calls it the tableau or something like that. And I'm like, wow, that's what I'm drawn to. I love having those stories. Not all the time, obviously with a portrait, it might be something different. But with street photography, when I recognize that that's how I tend to see the world, that's how I tend to observe, even if I'm not using my camera, I try and place things in different sides, like, hey, this guy's looking at that person on that side, and then what's the angle where this is drawing your eye to the other thing, and what are these characters doing on the stage? What's their position on that stage? So I think recognizing how you see the world is probably what gave me the biggest step forward, for sure. What about you guys?
I think for me is putting myself into positions, into areas that are much tighter or much larger than what I'm used to. So instead of being on the same streets where I'm composing similarly to how I always do or have, I try to find these smaller streets, little alleyways, little tight spaces, or even, you know, I do a landscape or I go shoot on like a really large street. And that tends to kind of push me to the bounds of like where my eyes, you know, typically go. So, and that also comes with like shooting different focal lengths too. Like, wow, this is a really big street, you know, I can shoot more, you know, telephoto, or I can shoot like more like a 50, or like, wow, this is like a really narrow street, alleyway, etc. I can shoot like a 21 millimeter, and then start to think about composition more in terms of like maximizing, you know.
So you adapt your composition to the environment in some way.
Yeah, exactly. So especially in Tokyo, you can get away with shooting a 21 millimeter, and then suddenly your compositions are based off directly what your eye sees and not really what's in the camera frame, because 21 millimeter is so wide, right? So at that point, you don't even need to pick up the camera to your eye. You don't need to look through a viewfinder. Just like, wow, what's right in front of me? What do I want to create? What do I want to include in the frame? And then you can just use your body to go forward and backwards. And to me, that's really liberating, is like when you can see the photo ahead of time without even bringing the camera up to your eye or thinking about what the camera is going to shoot. It's like what your eye shoots. So I love shooting 21 millimeter. It's a lot of fun. And then if I go into like a really large environment, then I have telephoto. Like suddenly telephoto works for me. And I'm really bad at shooting telephoto here in Japan. But if I go out to like a really large street, go do landscapes, then suddenly I can shoot telephoto. You know what I mean? Things start to make sense then.
Alex, I think, sorry to break the flow, but your volume's a little bit low. Cooper, is that showing up on your end as well?
Gotcha.
Just before like I can hear you fine. It's just I'm not.
No, I can hear pretty good. No, okay. I mean I can hear pretty good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Good. I can always boost it later anyway.
Okay, good. Yeah, just wanted to make sure we were getting.
We're all good. We're up to me next.
Your Coops.
What's taught me composition. I think for me it was just learning to take the photo, like Alex was just saying, you can sort of see the photo before you take it. I think it was training myself to be able to see pictures everywhere without a camera, regardless of, you know, focal length, which is why I think personally for me, my favorite focal length is 40 millimeters. So 40 mil, I love 40 mil on everything, on every system, the equivalent, whatever 40 mil is on medium format cameras, you know what I mean? That 80 mil on a 6.7, whatever, you know, it all equates to 43 or whatever. I think teaching myself to just see compositions without a camera, to be able to look at anything and go, okay, that would make a good photo, which is why I always have a camera with me these days, because sometimes, you always see something, and you go, damn, I wish I had a camera on me to take that photo. But just learning how to make it, like, just look at anything, any scene. I'll be walking around with my wife, with the kids, or even driving, and you see something. I think it happens all the time when I'm driving. Like, I might be driving, staring out the window, or while I'm driving somewhere, and I will see things and automatically kind of have this frame in my mind of that works, that doesn't work, and learning to do that, I think is very hard, and it's something that just comes with time. When the more time you spend with your camera, the more time you spend shooting, taking photos, you kind of see the photo before you take it. And I think those are the photos that sort of make my best photos, or I think they make the best photos when someone can visualize a composition before they even get the camera out. And that might be just a rough composition, and obviously you're going to pull the camera out and you're going to get precise framing, etc. But teaching myself just to see photos in everyday life everywhere is a very important skill, I think, to be able to make good photos, and especially to be able to make really good street photos. Now, obviously, all that's different for portraiture, as we know, like, depending on what you're doing portrait-wise. But even then, like, I took a couple photos last week. I was driving through the city, and I was looking for somewhere to park, and I saw this guy sitting on a step, and he was a massive goth, and the first thing that caught my eye was the giant boots he had on, and the first thing that came to my head was The Matrix, lobby scene, Neo. That's what they looked like. He had those.
He had
boots.
the trench coat.
He had the trench coat. He had everything, but it was the boots, those specific boots, because
Like Doc Martin kind of black boots or something.
Not with the big steel caps, and he had the studs on them. Like when Neo walks in, when the Wachowskis, that scene when he walks into that lobby and his boots are the first establishing shot you see of his boots, and then that's the first thing I saw, and then I actually stopped the car, found a parking spot, got out with my camera, and just walked straight over to him and said, "Hey man, like, I was just driving past and I said, I saw your boots. It reminded me of The Matrix." And then, like, I started framing up a shot, and he was really cool about it. He was obviously someone, like, the way he was dressed, dressing for attention. So, he was probably stoked that someone stopped and complimented him. But like, I just was driving past and I just saw that photo, like, right. And in my head, I'm like, I know how to compose that. I know how to, he was sitting on a step, the way his feet were placed, all that sort of thing. And that was, turned out to be okay photos, nothing amazing, but I think that was getting round, back to answering the question. Just sort of teaching myself to be able to see photos without putting a camera up to my eye has definitely helped the most.
Every photo's exercise in that, isn't it? Whether it succeeds or fails or whatever you want to call it.
As you guys know, it's probably 90% failure, 10% success rate.
And that's subjective.
Yeah.
True.
Anyone who tells themselves that they only take amazing photos is full of crap, or they're not a real photographer or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. What's the old, whoever said it, first 10,000 photos are your worst, or who said that? One of the greats said that.
Wasn't Brisson?
Was it? I don't know.
Like
no.
Someone. I always think about when you hear quotes like that, as if, like, whoever the photographer was, they were just, like, drunk talking smack or something. You know what I mean? Like, they were talking shit, and then somehow, that's become, like, their catchphrase.
Profound, and their mates are around them going,
like, is it? Yeah.
That's so good.
Like Winograd, was he the one of, if the photo's not good enough, you're not close enough? Was that Winograd?
Maybe. But the thing is, probably a bunch of people said the same thing.
Yeah.
But he got remembered for it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. And I always wonder if he's, like, sitting, that those people are sitting back and just being like, why the hell did that become my tagline, or so to speak?
Yeah.
I think, guys, that the other Alex, not me, Alex Webb. Yes. The real Alex. The one I will probably never come to be better than. He has some of the best compositions in my mind. I think he's like one of the masters of composition to me. And I have a couple examples I want to share here on camera.
Yeah, he definitely ties into that way of seeing that I was describing, the layers and the stage, and the Germany photo. Munich.
So he takes sometimes objects and he creates these other frames within the frame, right?
Mm.
And so he's used this wall that has this cutout to then take a photo of this surfer.
That's in Germany, is it? Somewhere.
Munich.
The river surfers. I've seen that.
Right.
Do you know that was a fluke, that the surfer was in that shot and he didn't realize it until he saw the slide afterwards?
That's amazing.
Yeah,
really?
He did an interview with Roger Deacon for his podcast, and Roger Deacon asked him about this photo, and he said he was just trying to create like this interesting composition, and it wasn't until he went back and saw afterwards that he had perfectly framed the surfer in the bullseye.
That's awesome.
That's incredible. Yeah, he uses, I think what Alex Webb does very effectively is he's using frames within frames. He uses doorways, he uses windows to
the shadows as well.
Yeah,
subframing.
The shadows, subframing, these kind of things where you really have to literally think outside the box. And I think he's amazing at that. And that's personally what I want to get better at. I want to get better at these subframings, these frames within frames. And also what I want to get better at for compositions is using colors in the composition that will expand where your eye sees, right? So he's got this green in the front and he's got the red in the back, right?
Yes.
And of course, he didn't choose these colors, but he's able to recognize them and be able to see the subjects within the frame and use color as a form of composition, right?
Oh yeah. If that was like, for instance, I'm looking at that. I've never seen this photo before, and I'm looking at it right now, and my brain is saying the two figures in the back in red, extremely ominous. It's they're staring at this kid who's in a much lighter shade of green, holding his fairy floss, and it's a sinister pink looking. It's a sinister photo. To me, that comes across as maybe those guys have got bad intentions in them, whatever it is. But yeah, just the color. You could
create all kinds of stories from this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a fantastic photo. For me to be able to look at it and have those sorts of thoughts, amazing photo.
He took this one in Istanbul. And so for anyone listening and not seeing the video, I think if you look up Alex Webb Istanbul, this should be the cover of that book, maybe. But it's the boy with fairy floss in the foreground under fluorescent lighting, and then there's a little subframe behind him.
Yeah. So these are the two things that I personally am trying to get better at is not using color so literally. Like of course you can see the photo I have of this lady in the red behind me here.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite photos. I shot this in New York.
Were you looking at me, Alex? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress?
Exactly.
So it's a Matrix theme today.
Imagine it is, isn't it?
Yeah, if she wasn't wearing red, that photo wouldn't work the same.
Yeah.
Like we have to admit it.
Yeah.
And the geometry of her shoulders and silhouette as well.
Oh yeah.
The hat.
I really love what I was able to
thin waist, the way her body's shaped as well. It all comes together.
The shadow in the background creates more contrast as well.
Yeah, and we got different subjects. One within the shadow that's kind of peeking out, and then we got some others that are in the light that have a little shadow hitting them too as well. And then she's right in the middle, and she's got the shadow on her face, and this hat that's creating the shadow around her face, where you can just see her lips. Little bit of lipstick in there if you look really close enough, and she's got some sunglasses on. So I really like what I was able to do with the light and the shadow in this and the composition and these kind of things. But what I want to get better at is the subframing, and then using color like what we saw with Alex Webb, where it's like you're creating this frame within a frame with the color, and like how to find that, how to see that. I really want to be able to do that in the future.
For sure.
It's hard.
The fact that actually brings up an interesting point. The fact that Cooper and I can see this photo behind you, again, for people listening, it's just a little photo frame Alex has in the background of his video feed.
Yeah.
But it's probably taking up 10% of the frame. The fact that we can look at that as such a small thumbnail effectively and recognize that that's a good composition.
Mm.
That ties into something that maybe one of the greats said, that like, if you're looking at your photos, if it doesn't look good in the contact sheet as a little, or upside down for that matter, it's probably not good. If you can recognize the composition as being good from like a really far away macro view, that's a really good hint, because I don't see the full image, but I can tell there's the shapes of the windows in the background. It's tiny, but I can tell, the red dress, the shape.
I mean, that's
all that.
The thing. And I think that the first thing is the bright color against the muted background, and that's catching our eye first. That's the first thing that catches our eye, the use of color. Light, I suppose, the way the lights, the bright red dress, the lights hitting her, and then all the other elements come together.
Do you guys ever do that in Lightroom? Sorry, where you zoom out and you look at just the grid, like the contact sheet view, and try and recognize which shot's better just by seeing the tiny thumbnail?
No, I should probably do it more.
It's a good exercise.
A friend of mine taught me that with. I don't even know what the shortcut key is on Lightroom.
So the lights off one.
Yeah, but I know with Photoshop, I used to zoom in and out all the time, and I'd zoom all the way out to create a tiny thumbnail, like you were just saying, and look at it from that perspective and see. And that was probably more when I was doing landscapey stuff when I first started.
Yeah, I think Cartier-Bresson would turn the contact sheet upside down and see if the image looks good sideways or upside down. Then you can see it's a good geometrically a good composition.
Yeah, Hash, I'm actually doing just that right now, because what's happened is I had the Nikon Coolscan V, right? And that would just scan a strip all at a time. But now that broke, and now I am onto my flatbed scanner that I have right now. And with my flatbed, I'm doing a strip of 4 at a time. So literally while I'm scanning, I see the thumbnails for all of them, and I can just select, and they're tiny, within Silverfast. And they're tiny, and I just see the little thumbnail, and I'm like, okay, that's crap. This works. This is good. I want to see that. I want to scan this. I want to scan that. And so, I am looking at these like really small little frames, and I can see, based on the composition, this little tiny one here. Because if you start to like kind of looking at your frame, and like you're just trying to find these little things,
dissecting. You need to have that macro overview. That's a really good strategy. Is if you get that macro view, and it's good, then you can zoom further and dissect and see, all right, what else works in the composition. But I think you have to have that great impactful like thumbnail view for a good composition.
Right.
And it's hard.
It is hard.
We rely on those details sometimes to carry our photos. So
you're right.
It's not as strong.
Yeah, then you get into like heavy cropping and trying to save photos that
dodging and burning
didn't come out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, what's that famous? Is it Arnold Newman? Arnold Newman photo, the piano photo of his, where if you look at the full contact sheet, it's a 6x6. It's a Rolleiflex image or something that's just like super heavily cropped all the way in to create such a great composition, which is why I suppose these days with like I really enjoy scanning with my film with the digital camera setup and also high res, high megapixel cameras, because it gives us that flexibility to crop, so to speak. You know what I mean? And I do think that while we're on that subject, everyone talking smack about the megapixel race and stuff like that, and we don't need, it's, you kind of go, well, if you're talking about it from a composition point of view, having 40 or 60 megapixels to be able to crop, not, obviously some people are going to argue, well, get it right in camera first, but then it's like, well, if I've got the ability to crop, why not? Which is why I kind of like that for the Fuji cameras. My X-T5 here is, they've all got 40 megapixel sensors now. So you've got that flexibility. My scanning, I've got my scanning setup behind me there is, I picked up an old D810 Nikon, and that's, 36 megapixels to scan. And that gives me plenty of flexibility to crop my negatives if I need to, things like that.
Are you guys in the camp of like, what I feel it's fine to crop, and if it is going to improve the image, then do it. Yeah, especially if you can't create the composition in the moment.
I don't rate. I think that anyone who these days, let's say last 20 years of digital, no cropping, we don't crop, etc. I was just saying about that Arnold Newman or Andrew Newman. Why am I forgetting? Regardless, we go back to the way people printed photos. So, we're talking about enlargements and actual prints from the negatives. So many of those would have been cropped by the masters. I mean, I know, Ansel Adams probably did lots of cropping in the dark room. And I think that if people were cropping from, the 30s, 40s, 50s, why can't we crop now? Why all of it? Why? I mean, whose rule is this that you got to get it right in camera first time if you've got the ability to crop? I don't see any issue with cropping.
I think it's good to get it as right as you can.
The only time I don't agree with cropping is if you're cropping something to change the context of a photo to mislead, so to speak, like maybe mislead or spread disinformation, so to speak. You know what I mean? If you're cropping to change the perspective to tell a story, that's fine. But I don't like, journalists and tabloid stuff like that. You know what I mean? They might crop an image heavily just to make someone look like, give them a real negative point of view or change the narrative or something like that. I'm not a fan of that.
But that's the story they're trying to tell.
Yes, but
we're all having a bias in some way.
They're all trying to tell another story. So that's my point of view. That's just my personal feelings on cropping. But otherwise, cropping is a tool, like a focal length. You could say.
But if you're using it as a crutch, I think that's where it's dangerous. Right. Like you're lazy or you didn't want to walk closer.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty standard for street photography. Everyone starts off not wanting to get as close, and then
that's really the thing.
And then you end up with a 28mm lens, and you just like pow in your face, which is definitely where I started. Personally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did go through about a year last year where it's like I am gonna challenge myself, and it's not like I had a problem with cropping too much or this or that, but I did want to challenge myself in not cropping my photos at all last year. And now these days I'm getting more into allowing myself to crop and not putting this like artificial rule on myself. But I was doing it to make myself better. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to crop this photo. And when I look at it later, if it doesn't work good without the crop, then I'm not gonna, try to save it and this and that. And part of that comes with shooting 35mm film. Like you don't have a whole lot to work with sometimes.
No, you don't.
And but that's also kind of the challenge is that when I'm shooting 35mm film, I should get the composition right. I should be able to get the photo composed right without having to crop. And so I think that's been good for me.
No. And I personally, I never shoot with the crop in mind. Like you say, if one, you want to get that photo, get as close as you need to be, etc., make it work. But if the crop works in post, whether that be printing the photo in enlarging it or in Lightroom or whatever the case is, if the crop works, it works. But I never purposefully go and take a photo knowing that, okay, I'm going to crop that later and it will work. I will try and get, as close as I will, always try and get as close as possible.
A good example of this is, the famous Cartier-Bresson decisive moment jumping the puddle guy.
Yes.
But that's a good example of where maybe it is sometimes good to shoot with intention to crop. He had a fence in the way. He couldn't get any closer.
True.
So if he could, obviously he would have, but he's like, you know what, I'll shoot it and then probably might need to crop it later. Whether that's a subconscious thought at the time or popped up later. That's fine too, because you don't want to limit yourself and, I'm not going to take the shot because the fence is in the way, or I would have to crop, which I don't want to do. Because you have the other camp, well, it's not really the other camp, but, John Free, the late John Free would say, shoot to the borders, the full frame, never crop. And he's referencing Cartier-Bresson, who most of the time did that. Right. But if Cartier-Bresson needed to crop, he's going to do it. He's not going to let that limit his capability.
No, true. I suppose speaking of John Frey, that's why he always used to praise the Nikon F3, his camera, because he always used to. I remember 100% coverage of viewfinder. He always used to say about, like, I remember seeing in multiple videos, he would say so many times about his F3 and the reason, I can
but
see.
His reasoning is good. He wants you to be able to compose as well as possible in the moment, as many of all the greats, I'm sure, would agree.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But you can't let something limit you if it's like, I'm not going to take the shot because I would have to crop it.
No. Why don't we move on to now what we were talking about before, how aspect ratio affects composition.
Mm,
What we're about to talk about before.
tricky one.
Yeah, tricky one. So, obviously that 2:3 aspect ratio. And I suppose we could even talk about more now how vertical compositions are sort of becoming the standard. Now, thanks to Instagram and thanks to the internet, vertical composition is becoming the standard. You know what I mean?
The standard
and that's
for what though?
people post and display photos.
On social media.
On social media, which... And we all got an opinion about that, especially the three of us. But again, even I suppose
it's true. I
books.
think a lot of us do consciously or subconsciously, think about like, okay, how is this going to look on Instagram when I post it?
Should we resist that urge though? I have a feeling we should resist that.
Is that why Pentax brought out the half frame? Is that why they decided to go with the Pentax 17? Was because of Instagram?
Told me that it was one of their reasons. Apparently,
I still don't know how you managed to get that interview.
I was lucky.
You
right
lucky
place,
bastard.
Right time.
Mate,
I don't think he's lucky. He's got a good channel. He makes
good
content.
Channel, but
no, I was also. I'm in the right city. They were visiting. I had a friend who's connected, and
when that popped up, Hash, I just thought
it wasn't clout or anything like that.
No. I was like, in my head, I'm going, how did you jag that?
I still can't believe it. I still can't believe I sat with the.
I know what you're like. You're not a clout chaser. You don't have an ego when it comes to this stuff. You are a genuinely nice person.
If you zoom in, you could see the sweat on my nose and forehead while I'm doing that interview.
You were so well dressed. You had your glove. You were so you had it dialed in. And in my head, I'm just like because I've known you for years. I've known each other for years. I know exactly the type of person you are. I'm like, how did he line this up? And it's so formal. I'm like, this is amazing.
It was brought to me. It was presented to me, luckily.
Yeah. That's amazing. Fantastic. Such a cool thing to be able to do as well. Such a cool thing. I mean, did you ask them about the future cameras? They probably couldn't even tell you.
You know what? A lot of it was not on camera. We chatted for a while. I wanted to keep the interview that I presented tight. And we had a good chat before and afterwards. There was probably an hour of footage as well. The video was 20 minutes.
And I'm sure there's maybe some things they told you that you're not allowed to repeat.
Kind of, but also no, they were quite tight-lipped. And there's interesting things beforehand that they told me, we don't want to talk about this. I'm sorry, and we can't talk about that. And I had some questions lined up to do with these things. And I'm like, oh shit, now I have to on the fly, change what I'm going to ask about. Because I had intention to ask about certain things, and they're like,
I know what you wanted to ask. You wanted to ask, when am I going to get a new Pentax 645 and a Pentax?
I did ask that. No, that was fine. Yeah. That was on the table. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And again, they can only reveal what they wanted to or what they knew about, and they didn't have any solid information.
Definitely.
But no, they did do vertical as part of the reasoning. It is a camera that's meant to appeal to largely a younger audience, and they do see the world like that. But should we resist that for the sake of the art? I don't know. I think we should to some degree.
I think we should.
Galleries, photo books, the way we should be seeing images, at least in some large capacity, shouldn't be dictated by social media and the new vertical norm. Because how do we see the world? We don't see it in this orientation. We see it in 3x2 roughly, or I don't know, even wider. But the point is, it's horizontal.
But I don't
feel the vision.
Yeah, I don't even like that vertical. I mean, give me a 4x5 vertical.
Vertical
ratio,
can be great. Depends on the image.
Or a 4x3. Yeah, but I don't like. I don't like that. That's becoming the norm. I should say, that's you get more screen area if you post that vertical shot. Whereas if you you post your traditional landscape shot, there's only X amount of coverage, which I don't like as well, because then people can't maybe see the composition as you intended.
But real estate on a smartphone shouldn't be our end game goal anyway, right? Just go watch any Daniel Milner video and you'll be reminded what it's all about and why we can't be sucked in by this thing, because
I love his channel. I love his channel. It's so good. I think
for our own personal content or street photography work, we shouldn't try to shoot vertically just because we want to appease the algorithm of Instagram or get more likes and these kind of things. But the unfortunate thing about doing client work these days, doing portrait sessions, shooting events and these kind of things, a lot of the clients are saying, we want you to shoot more vertical. You get more
fine.
vertical
Yeah.
shots.
Yeah.
That's good. And there's a place for that. And I ask clients sometimes when I'm shooting at jobs like, hey, are you mainly just posting to Instagram? Because if you want, I can just shoot vertically. They're like, yeah.
Right. So like I had to shoot a car event recently. Maybe you guys saw
The drifting one?
Yeah.
That was so cool. That was amazing.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
I
I love
drifting.
And of course though, but I'm shooting a lot of that event. A lot of the shots were vertical to appease.
That would be abnormal for cars, isn't it? Because your cars are traveling across the frame and they're drifting. You want to kind of naturally get the road and the horizontal perspective.
Yeah. And so, and it's just also like the event organizers like, can you get a vertical shot of all of these cars in the frame,
shoot really wide, I guess.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Can you shoot really wide but vertical? I'm like, oh
yeah,
shit.
That's what you do sometimes now for videography jobs, and you just shoot really wide 4K and then you kind of crop it later.
So
but for the artwork, for the important stuff, I think we can't let it dictate. I mean, unless it lends itself to the series that you're shooting. If it's a portrait series, then you'd be shooting it.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the photos on my walls, like the 4 vertical prints I've got framed up, but they're 4x3 or 4x5 vertical.
Yeah.
But I personally shot those in mind with that's the composite. I want that vertical composition, but that aspect ratio in mind I had specifically. I think that's why my favorite aspect ratio is 6x7.
I have a test print to show you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, just go ahead.
Because what is 6x7? 6x7 is a
4x5 roughly. It's not exactly.
Not exactly, almost. But that's definitely like I love square. I love when somebody can nail. Actually, let's wait for Alex because we don't want him to miss out on this because I'm sure he's got his opinions. Personally, when somebody makes an amazing square composition, like I feel like everything falls into place. And for me as well, if I'm shooting square, like on this old TLR, on the old Yashica or something, or Hasselblad, whatever I've had in the past, Hasselblad,
camera of the week,
Bronica, me, whatever I'm flowing with at the moment. Getting a really good square composition is extremely satisfying for me. It's probably
harder.
It's very hard. It's very hard. I feel like layering and subframing within a square is really difficult. That's why I love Fanho's Rolleiflex work from Shanghai and all that sort of stuff. His, a lot of his light and shadow stuff, really well done. Amazing compositions. Any of the masters that used a Rolleiflex and were able to, Rolleicord, whatever, any square TLR or view camera, to be able to really dial in amazing square compositions is, I think it's a skill. It's an art form. Sure. Yeah. What were you about to get? We went and fished something tasty out for us.
Let's see it.
I'm sure you've seen
Coney Island
photo. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Maybe you've seen this one, right?
Beautiful.
The colors are off on this one, but like this is something that I shot, vertically with intention, right? Because I wanted to make sure that I got all of these toys in the sand, and then the kids ahead, and then all the guy laying down there, and this.
Can you hold it even further back? I'm just curious, what is the ratio of this one? Okay, right, because the image is cropped for us on the video feed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry everyone. Let me put Alex on the full screen.
That'd be good.
See it. There we go. That wouldn't work as well as a horizontal composition.
Well, this is a beautiful segue into what we include and what we don't include. Something we touched on before starting.
So
right,
yeah. So you've got I look at this photo and you've got it wouldn't work like that.
Yeah, it couldn't work. I also wanted to get the background. I wanted to get everything in there.
Well, you've got the negative space of the blue sky, which works fantastically. That's essentially hold it up for everyone. So we've got rule of thirds already there. We've got top third negative space with the sky, and then all our subject matter is in the bottom 2/3. But then again, you've got it split into the kid's head, the sunbather's red butt laying down, and then the guy standing up in the blue trunks with the dog tags. You know what I mean? That's again splitting into thirds again. It's like a subframe. In my mind, I'm looking at it going, it's rule of thirds within rule of thirds. And that works. That works really well, that composition.
Was that because it's almost like it's a bit off rule of thirds? What was actually your rationale behind composing that, Alex? Let's hear, because it's interesting to hear the photographer's point of view and then how other people see it as well, because everyone sees it differently.
I think honestly, the subject really just determined the composition in the end.
Did you crop, by the way?
No, this is zero crop.
Right.
Yeah, this is zero crop.
In fact, was the kid buried in the sand? Was that the first thing that drew you to? That was it. That was the
definitely
the anchor.
Yep. But definitely that was the anchor. But I really loved these toys, right?
Right. So you created the composition around him and the toys as the primary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just boom, he's there. But then we got the two guys in the background there. I was like, I gotta get them. It's a beautiful day. I want to make sure I get the Ferris wheel sticking out of the back right there, and so yeah,
it looks like you knelt down a bit to get more of the sky.
Definitely.
So why, for example, did you kneel down as opposed to standing and shooting a bit more downwards?
Shooting down,
wanted that negative
like
space.
Gotta get the layers in there. You gotta be able to get that subject, and then
the Ferris wheel.
The toys were in front, and the boy, and then the guys, and everything there, and everything just kind of came together, and it came together vertically, and that was the intention. So I think that works for me. That's kind of one of the only good street photography vertical photos that I have. A lot of them are horizontal.
Do you know what I think is one of the best things about it and why it works? And Cooper already touched on this. It's the negative space, because you have a busy main part of the image. If you had been standing and shot downwards with only a tiny sliver of sky,
it wouldn't have been the same. Yeah, because too congested,
feel claustrophobic.
Right. Definitely.
Did you shoot? Was that on a 28 or a 35mm lens or a 21?
35.
35.
Yeah. 35.
And again, that just I suppose we could talk about focal length as well, but 35. Everyone loves a good 35mm lens because you can do so much with it.
35, and you said 40, Cooper. Is that how you guys think you see the world roughly? I mean, of course, it's different.
I see the world in 40 personally. 40, I see it in 40. For me, I can look at a scene and I just know, like for instance, as we all know, there's no 40mm frame lines on any rangefinder besides the Leica CL and the Minolta CLE. Yeah. But it's, so I automatically brings up a 50. But in my head, I know exactly where the 40mm frame lines would sit from just, years of shooting 40mm. But I just can see that composition. Once I pull the rangefinder up to my eye, I can just tell where that 40mm, and that's just how I see things personally. Okay. For me.
Right, you, Alex.
28
wider. 28. Right.
Yeah, 28.
Interesting
28 for sure.
So, do you guys think we can train that? Because people would say 50 is a normal lens, 40 is a normal lens, 35 is a normal lens. But then, if you just train yourself to see more of the peripheral, you can change that, can't you?
Yeah. I mean, as they say, what is it? The eye is like 43.5 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If we're being
and then
exact.
Again, our focus kind of fades off towards, and it depends on the situation. How far away are you walking? Are you sitting? Are you outside? There's a lot of variation.
I think with that, focal length wise, you find something that works for you. Like for you, Hash, it's 35 is your favorite, isn't it? I know it's you generally your favorite go to.
Yeah, around there. Yeah, because you could put a 40mm lens on the camera and I'll be, it's the same thing. It's not that far off.
Which
50,
to be honest,
you feel that.
I've been this close to buying a Ricoh GR 3X, the X.
You can find one.
To be honest, if I had the money, I would go and buy the new the Q3 43. Like for me, that's that is just like I could buy that and be content. I did play around.
40's amazing. 40's
I played around with that. I played around with it, the new Q3 43, and I'll just tell you the lens on that 43mm Apo that they've put on that is just like volcanic eruption good. Like I can't believe that you pick that camera up and it's so light and it's so small, and then that lens on there is just for lack of a better word, an absolute ball terror of a lens. It's just
Never
magic.
heard that one before.
Oh, it's bought. Oh, if I could have, I could afford it if I sold every single piece of camera equipment I had.
It's too much.
Yeah, but then again, it's one.
And you're
it's too
stuck
much.
with that focal length.
Mate, Saul just tried to con me into buying an M11, secondhand M11 for 11 grand, and I'm like, but the camera electronic on, and I'm like, Saul, but no. And I was like, I'm happy with my 24 megapixel, my M10. I'm happy with this. This is my goat. This is my favorite camera of all time, digital wise.
I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but you sold your Leica SL, whatever it was.
I got rid of the SL2.
The one that you were raving about how it's perfect for everything, and
it is, but it just, for me, it comes back to that same old thing of EVF versus optical viewfinder. That's what it comes back to.
But you're using it for video as well, right?
I was using it for video as well, which is why I picked up another XT5, which is probably the biggest jack of all trades camera you could get.
Yeah,
the XT5.
So versatile, the Fujis,
just everything. But back to
composition.
The
competition.
I think when you find your jam, you know what I mean? And some people it's 50, some people it's 85. You know what I mean? Some people will only shoot an 85mm lens. 28, 35, 50 are obviously the most common. But I think when you find your niche, and I've floated back over the years between 50mm, I do love a good 50, but then, I've had a run where one of my favorite street photos I've ever taken, it's up here as well. This is a silver gelatin. Let me put it on the big screen.
Oh, yeah.
This one I love, of the punk rockers. So you've got the punks. Let's get the light. So the punks like that, this soon I had my 35mm Summicron at the time I had it was getting fixed, getting serviced because it was like brand new and the barrel, don't ask me why, it started to come loose. So they gave me a 28 Summicron for the time being. And, obviously I was pretty close to be able to get this shot. But having that guy at the front with his hair,
I love that.
I love it. It's my favorite. And they're all dressed up like goths.
It feels like another time.
Yeah, it does. Reason. Like it could be back in the
early 90s or whatever,
something like that. And this is one of my favorite shots ever. And then I got on a roll with 28mm. You know what's funny? Several months ago, I saw him in the city. So I was walking around taking photos, and I saw this kid again. And it's probably been about 3 or 4 years since I took that photo. And I was like, and I actually went up to him and I was like, hey man, like, you're not going to remember, but one day, blah, blah, blah. And I actually whipped my phone out and I was like, I snapped this photo of you. And it's, it's one of my favorite, you and your friends, one of my favorite. And he was like, oh, that's cool. Like, oh my God, that was so long ago. But, just randomly bumped into the kid again.
It's cool when that happens.
But yeah, for a while there, 28mm became my go-to. I was like, I think it was mostly because I got a couple really good photos and it prompted me to want to get closer and stuff. And then, but as I said, I've always enjoyed the 40mm because I find personally the 40mm to be just so versatile. Especially a fast aperture 40mm like the Voigtlander here, 1.2. You know what I mean? Like I can cover almost anything. You know what I mean? Like you can really blow out the background and get a really shallow depth of field with 1.2 on a full frame, as you guys know, and get close. And especially this lens specifically, it's like a jack of all trades lens. Like it focuses down to 0.5 of a meter. You know what I mean? Closer than the rangefinder. So when you're in live view, you can still focus and make a close up portrait. But it's enough to include X amount of the background, but it's not too tight as a 50. It's just, for me, it's just, just that, like if I had to pick one focal length, it would be a 40mm. And I feel like I've trained myself enough using the 40mm lens that I can shoot almost everything, that I like to shoot with that focal length. And I'm sure it's the same for you guys with, was you saying 28, Alex, is your all time? Or 35? Or do you go back and forward on the fence?
You adapt it to the situation, right? I think I'm a bit similar to Alex in that way.
Yeah, it's really honestly about the location. And for me,
shooting.
It's not, it's what I'm shooting. It's about the location.
But
it's
like
not,
you said at the beginning, the streets of Tokyo would definitely dictate as to which focal length you would be using.
Yeah. And
for Alex,
I have
maybe for someone else, they shoot Tokyo on 90.
Yeah, maybe there's just, I think there's some people that they want to take the photos with the lens that they prefer, you know, with the results in the end. But for me, it's more backwards, or it's more about the environment dictating that. So I mean, if I go back home to California, I'm leaning towards 35 then. If I'm in New York, I'll shoot a 28. Manhattan, I'll shoot a 28. Hong Kong, etc. But if I'm going out to shoot landscapes, I'll shoot a 50. You know, and these are just the things that, I mean, it's not like I'm picking favorites just for the sake of what my favorite focal length is, and I don't constrain myself in that way. I choose what fits the environment the best. And I am trying to layer. I do have a style where I'm zone focusing and I'm layering and these kind of things. And so because that's my style, I need to have the focal length fit that. So when I shoot a 50 here in Fukuoka or in Tokyo, I have a really hard time shooting 50. Like I have a lot of days where it's like I can't even get through half a roll shooting a 50, maybe 5-6 photos, you know, for 5-6 hours, you know what I mean? For a day of shooting. And I have a real struggle shooting 50 actually.
It's not aligning with your eye.
On, yeah, exactly. When I put the 28 on, boom, 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 I'll maybe get through 2-3 rolls if I get in the zone.
So again, it just goes back to how you see, how you're seeing and what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Make sure you're aligned with that, I guess, for the listener. And maybe we can go on to some other tips for like just general concepts of composition that we've learned along the way. Because there's one I've been thinking of that is kind of just elementary, really, is that always be conscious of what's in your frame, right? Because especially when we're starting off, we get a bit hyper-focused on the main subject and you forget to think about, hey, what's the background doing? Or what's this little thing jutting into the corner that I didn't notice because I'm hyper-focused on the main subject, especially if it's like you're doing the whole 50 mil 1.8 bokeh thing and you kind of get too sucked into this central, singular subject. So I think that's one of the first things you want to exercise your eye in doing, is not just having a one-dimensional point of focus, but think about how is the background contributing to this, or, you know, hey, what else is in there? What's the foreground doing? If I moved a little bit down or up, kind of like we spoke about Alex's Coney Island image before, how would that change? So always have that awareness, I think, is one of the most important things.
Yeah, to branch off that, and essentially it's more or less the same point, but definitely people should learn to exclude. Learn what, you know, what's the best way I'm trying to say it? You know, teaching yourself what not to include in the frame, not what to put in there, what to subtract.
Is it like something that distracts from your main image? Or
yeah. Well, I don't know.
It's just not contributing, maybe.
I mean, maybe I could almost phrase it along the lines of like with Alex, is using negative space. You know, put, you know, what not, you know, excluding things in use of negative space to create maybe a more defined focal point for your image.
Well, a good way to think about it is like, what is the viewer's eye being drawn to? That's how I come to learn through looking at photo books or reading about photography, which obviously you don't want to just learn through theory, you want to practice as well. But it's a subconscious thing. It's like, what is my eye being drawn to? In Alex's image behind him with the woman in the red dress, if there was someone else wearing red in that rear right side where the block of shadow is, that would be a massive distraction, you know, or if it was a red building or a blue building, even if it wasn't just that block of shadow, he could maybe just shift a little bit, you know, exclude whatever that is, and it makes the image.
No, definitely. So
a lot of the times I was in Tokyo, I would avoid areas like Shinjuku or Shibuya sometimes because of all the color noise, the background, all the people's colorful clothes in the summertime in the background and things like that. A lot of distraction. And I would go
especially
to Ginza.
Advertising and commercial stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And when you go towards on the eastern side of Tokyo, it's a little bit older, and you go to Ginza, where you have a little bit more of Western style buildings,
the architectural feel. Yeah,
exactly. And then you get a little bit less distractions, and you can you can get these subjects in these kind of backgrounds too as well. And so yeah, it's difficult to sometimes find these distractions within your frame. But that's definitely a skill to exclude and include, right?
For
Definitely.
sure. What's another thing? I think taking multiple images sometimes, if you feel stuck and it doesn't immediately present itself to you that like, oh yeah, and I definitely want to go with this framing. Like Alex had the one with the boy and it's like, that's it. That's my anchor. I'll just work around that. But then even with that situation, you might want to take a couple of different ideas and just work the scene. I think working the scene is one of the most important things, whether it's just for your composition or story or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, we spoke. I think we spoke about that, or I brought that up last time on one of our episodes. I think people are too afraid to take, especially with film these days.
Yeah. You might be shooting Pentax 6.7.
Yeah, people are too afraid to work it and waste film. Whereas, if you have to, you have to just keep.
I guess you have to decide if the image is worth it. If you know it's a throwaway image and you're just practicing, and you're like, oh well, I'll just do it with my eye. I won't do it with film.
Yeah.
But if it's an important moment and you're like, shit, this is an opportunity.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I was out with a friend, and I've moved back to Fukuoka from Tokyo, right? And so before, when I was living here 2 years ago, I was shooting more digital at the time. And, as these 2 years have gone by, I've been shooting exclusively film. But before I was shooting more digital. And I went out with a friend the other day, and I was like, framing up a shot. I had my main subject there and everything like that, but I wasn't taking the photo yet. And my friend was like, "Take the shot. What are you doing? What are you waiting for? Take the shot. Take the shot." I'm like, no. I gotta wait.
You
wait for something else.
First,
you
were doing that when we were in Tokyo, actually, and we were both like kind of
right
related to that. When you kind of just want to see how it looks in the viewfinder. It's like, no, but it wasn't the shot.
Yeah, I was like, it's not there yet. You know what I mean? It could get better. This could evolve. This could progress into something that's worth taking.
Yeah, that's another important skill, I guess, is knowing when not to take the shot.
When not to take a photo. Yeah,
that's a big one. Yeah, when not to.
Did you make a trip to Tokyo recently? You were just up there, right?
Yeah, I went back to shoot an event, so I will be going back and forth to Tokyo sometimes for work, for play, exhibition thing going on. Actually, Rico just exhibited some of my photos with Tokyo SVC.
Nice.
Tokyo and everything.
Congrats.
Yeah, it was nice.
Speaking of Rico again, I'm still so tempted to dive onto the GR train.
Yeah, that's great. They're nice cameras. They're fun.
I'm very tempted. If I could find a decent secondhand X, I'd probably jump on it, to be quite frank.
They're hard to come by.
They are. I think
my friend has one on a waiting list for months now. You can't get one.
Well, I mean, I don't have any interest in the new HDF with the filter.
Yeah.
Zero interest in that. But yeah.
Can you put filters on the normal GR? Is that a filter thread? I can't remember.
No, that's the thing about that HDF or whatever it's called. Is that it has that halation filter that you can turn off and on built in, right?
On the normal ones, can you just chuck a glimmer glass on them?
No, but I'm pretty sure that Square Hood or someone there is an adapter you can get, the lens hood that goes over the front. Yeah,
to put it on when you need it for it not to just be built into the camera.
Yeah, definitely.
The problem is you got to get a hood around that filter so that you can avoid those reflections and these kind of things that filters sometimes give you. And then you're making
especially when they're
really
on the front.
big.
It creates ghosting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and you're making this thing really big, and then you're thinking like, well, I could have got an X100V or something instead,
Yeah.
Anyway, internet's favorite camera. Anyway, we have just cracked over an hour and almost 5 minutes, so maybe we should wrap it up in a sec, so we don't make this too long for the viewers.
I think it's a nice overview of how to think about composition.
Yeah,
I would love to talk about some inspirations. We touched on Salgado and maybe places that people can go to look and study. One of them, obviously, I think we talked about contact sheets, is the Magnum Contact Sheets book. That's a great one to start with. Almost everyone has that.
That's a great one. I think a valuable resource is actually, and I just tried out the trial membership of it, is a website called The Dark Room Rumor.
What's that?
It's like a streaming service, but it's just for videos and essentially documentaries about photographers and photography. It's actually pretty cheap. It's I think it's cheaper than Netflix or anything. It's called the Dark Room Rumor. And I was just on it, and there's a lot of really good documentary films on photography, essentially, if people want to go to that, thedarkroomrumor.com. And you can start, they give you a 7-day free trial if you want to jump on, but there's a lot of really good films on there about photographers and photography, and it's curated quite well. And there'll be a lot of things on there and photographers that no one's ever heard of before, but I think that's a really good resource for people because you can go and watch sort of documentaries and stuff like that, because I feel like there's a lot on YouTube, but it's not, you know what I mean? Like it's fancy YouTube videos, you know what I mean? Like the standard, flashy intros, etc. And like, finding your way through to maybe like a really good video about composition might be quite hard. Whereas you can go to this website and actually watch documentaries about the photographers.
It's curated,
yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think if you're into street photography, then definitely jump on YouTube, because I think it's still there and free. Everybody Street is on YouTube for free, isn't it? Or it was?
Oh, well, I'm pretty sure some version of it is.
Yeah, I think everybody...
documentaries.
Everybody should watch Everybody Street. I think that's a fantastic documentary, just to give you that wide palette of photographers and different styles and their style of compositions and stuff like that. And it's a good watch. What else? I mean,
I lean towards books. I just think if you can sit there with a photo for not just like a moment, like it would be in a documentary, but to study it, to be able to look at images in a photo book and break it down and think, what do I like about this? What works? Or what do other people say about it? But just to be able to have that time with it, whether it's in a gallery or a photo book.
Well, a big thing for me is art galleries, but paintings. The painting, as in not photography art gallery. I like to go and see, because again, you're looking at like oil on canvas paintings, especially sort of the Renaissance period stuff. Like when me and my wife did our big Europe trip, was it 8 years ago now, and I went to all the main museums in England, the Louvre in Paris, the Edinburgh Museum in Scotland, just art gallery there. Some of the paintings are just so amazing that these people essentially have free-handed these compositions, and I think there's a lot to be gleaned and learned from the masters of painting. And then
that's a huge one
with light and shadow, especially with light and shadow, because these guys are creating light and shadow for their paintings. Yeah. So that's
Alex Webb was influenced by painters, I think.
Oh, was he? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. He wrote in his in the intro of Suffering of Light that a lot of his sensibility came from that. From his parents were art people, and that's a big one for a lot of photographers, really,
and his wife too.
Yeah, for me definitely.
Paintings.
I think nothing beats doing, though. In the end of the day, right?
Doing, you got to do it.
Nothing beats doing, and
study your own
think,
images.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people could, expand on their focal lengths, and for me, the thing was, once I started shooting wider and wider, I felt personally that my compositions got better and better.
Really?
Yeah, personally,
it aligns with your style, I guess.
I think so. It aligns with my personality and these kind of things too as well. So I'm not saying that people have to shoot wide to get better compositions and these kind of things, but it did work for me. Like getting all the way out to 21 millimeter was literally eye opening for me. So I think it's always best is to do. Sometimes ignorance is bliss also, so don't get too caught up in other people's work and just go out there and kind of treat it like skateboarding. You're just kind of freestyling, right?
Speaking of other people's work, and this is why I envy you, Hash, and you've got the film meetups you do all the time, shooting with your friends, going out and taking photos with other people or with your friends. I don't really have any photography friends here in Perth. I'm always running solo. Loser. But when you're with, the times, like, for instance, when me and you have gone out and shot together in Melbourne or here in Perth or whatever, when you've been over, being with someone else and they have a different perspective than you. You know what I mean? You might see a composition and then I wouldn't have even realized that. But because, you've seen it and I've gone, oh, okay, okay, that's interesting, way to frame that.
Think outside the box.
Having that other 2, 3, 4 people with you, and everyone might be shooting the same subject, but because everyone's got their own unique point of view, you can automatically sort of be gleamed onto someone else's point of view composition that you would not have thought of in the first place, and that can be quite a helpful thing to do. Get out, and
even
shoot,
if it just makes you think about your own composition. Well, I mean, it does happen all the time when we shoot in groups. You don't want to be doing it for every session, obviously. It's just nice to break it up every now and then.
Yeah, but you might think, see, and it might just show you a different way of capturing the scene.
I told you I'm coming to Perth right at the end of the month. We can go shoot.
You said you're coming,
we can do a meet up there. I don't know if I mentioned to you. I did, right? We can see what days you're free.
Yeah,
do a Perth meetup.
Yeah, we can try and do a Perth meetup. That'd be cool.
We'll talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. We can try and do that. That'd be cool.
I messaged Silver Halide about it.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Get them on board,
if we get Amy and Alex on board, they're always keen for that.
Shooting with people can be fun. It makes you think outside of your own perspective for a bit and think, hey, why do I shoot this way? And does it work or not?
Yeah. Well, anything else to add, fellas? Or
any other inspo? I think that's good.
That's it. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like and subscribe to Alex on Streets.
Yep. go study Alex on Streets.
Yeah, Alex on Streets. Yeah.
Follow
All right. Well, speaking of that, make sure you guys are subscribed to our individual YouTube channels as well. Alex on Streets, Pushing Film. Hashem's got another channel, his Hashem McAdam channel as well, which is his personal one that you upload on every now and then. And then obviously my channel here, which you've got. If who's calling me now? Sol, the owner of Camera Electronic. I don't want to answer that. There's always something like, guess what I have? I'm like,
it's the gas line.
It is a gas line, more or less.
Gas line's calling.
Anyway, all right. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank
to
you
another
for
episode.
listening.
Yes.
Good chat, guys.
Enjoy the feedback. So please leave your comments down below. And if there's any subjects, topics you want us to get to, we can endeavor to do that as well for you guys. So thank you so much.
Leave your suggestions. Yeah. Looking forward to the next one.
And we'll see everybody in the next episode. Goodbye. Thank you.
See ya.